Okay, so today's topic will be more predominant harmonies. This time we're going to use the 2 chord. So I'm going to set up my staff, and I'll be in C major, common time. And I can just make a basic phrase expansion until I get to the 3rd beat of measure 2, where I'm going to put a predominant chord, and then a dominant, and then a tonic. Okay. So I'll do in C major a 1, 5, 6, 1, 5, 4, 3, 1, 6, 1 in root position. Then I'll do a 2, 6 here, and then a 5, 7, and a 1. All right, so my first 3 chords, it depends on my initial voicing. Maybe I'll do something like this. Really takes care of itself. The sol voice stays on sol. Then we do mi, re, mi, and do, re, do. Remember, these are the same melodies from the 1, 5, 6, 1 expansion that we discussed at the beginning of our chorale style part writing lessons. The 1, 5, 4, 3, 1, 6 is the next one, the next 3 chords. This one has very specific voice leading. Whichever voice starts on mi has a mi, fa, sol that creates parallel tenths with the bass. The tenor is going to stay on sol, and we can have do, ti, do in the soprano. Okay. Now I'm on a 1, 6, and I'm going to go to a 1 in root position because I want to have an extra beat here so that my 2 chord will land on beat 3 of the bar. So I've just played another tonic chord right after this 1, 6. And in doing so, I can simply rearrange the voices a little bit. That's all I got to do. The bass of the 1, 6 is the 3rd of the triad. So when it moves off of that to the root, for the root position 1 triad, I have to take one of the upper voices and put that on the 3rd. So in this case, I've chosen the alto to do so. And that is now going to set me up to go to the 2, 6 chord. So for 2, 6, I really want to double, in this case, not the root, but the bass note, the 3rd here. I want to double the F. So I'm going to do that in my alto voice. My soprano is going to go up to the re. And my tenor is going to go to la. Now I'm going to get to my 5, 7 chord. I'm going to double the root in the tenor and the bass, and they're actually sharing that note. That's okay. Then I'm going to keep the F in the alto on the same note, and then I'm just going to take my soprano and go from re down to the T here. Then I'll resolve it. T goes to do, fa goes to mi. That's the leading tone and the 7th, and then sol can stay. And I have my progression. So all the music that features the 1 and the 5 inversions is the tonic expansion portion of the phrase. Then we get the predominant with the 2, 6, the dominant with the 5, 7, and the tonic part of the phrase with the 1. This particular phrase that I composed ends with a tonic note in the soprano. Scale degree 1 is in the soprano. And the bass goes 5, 7 to 1 root position, so this is a PAC. just play how this sounds. So my first voicing is the root in the bass, the fifth in the tenor, the third in the alto, and the root in the soprano. Okay, so that's part writing with 2 chords. Very straightforward. Not much of a difference from 4 chords, as a matter of fact. The only difference when you use a 2/6, for example, and a 4 chord is that the soprano goes to re instead of staying on do. If it stayed on do, that would have been a 4 chord in root position. But I moved it up to re instead, so it makes it 2/6. Okay. Let me just give you a couple more options here for harmonies. Instead of the 2/6, I can have all the same things happening. So I'll just keep everything the same, and in fact, I'll end up on the same 1 chord on the second beat of the second measure. So this is all the same until we get to that chord. Now, instead of a 2/6, I'm going to go to a 2/6/5. I'm going to add a 7th to that chord, and then I'm going to go to a 5/7. Let me show you how that works. The bass is still fa, sol, do in the key of C. Now, my tenor is going to go to la. My alto is going to go down this time to re. And my soprano is going to stay on the C, which is do, which makes the 7th of the 2 chord. Now I can stay on re in my tenor. I can go to the sol in my, stay on re in the alto, go to the sol in my tenor, and then my soprano can go to T. Oh, and I realized that that is not a 5/7 chord. Technically, it's a 5 triad. So the one that's going to change is my alto is going to go up to the F. Okay. Now, my tenor stays on G. My alto resolves down to the E, and my soprano resolves up to the C. So 2/6/5 is a very similar thing. It's just, it creates a slightly different voice leading issue, which is that now the alto goes to the re instead of going up to the fa. But everything else is the same. So I'll play the 1 chord. That's the 1 chord after all that tonic expansion. This is beat 2 of measure 2. 2/6/5, 5/7, 1. Okay, again. Let's take the same progression, but instead of a 2/6/5, let's do a 2 in root position. So all of this is going to be the same. Okay, everything's the same. But instead of going to the F in the bass, I'm going to go to the D, and then I'm going to go to the G, and then I'm going to resolve it to the C. So this is going to be a 1 to a 2 root position to a 5/7 to a 1. All right, so for my 2 chord, I'm going to want my voices to move in the opposite direction with the bass. Because if you're going from a 1 in root position to a 2 in root position, those 2 chords are right next to each other. And if I just move all the voices in the most lazy way possible, it's not going to help me, because like the G, if I move the G and the tenor go to the A, then that's parallel fifths with the bass. If I make the C in the soprano go to the D, that's going to be parallel octaves with the bass. So I have to move everything in the opposite direction. It's not a parallel chord motion. So the G is going to go down to the F, the E is going to go down to the D, and the C is going to go down to the A. Now going to my 5/7 chord, the tenor stays on the F, the alto can stay on the D, and the soprano can go up to the B, and then I'll just resolve that accordingly. And that's going to sound like this. So here's my tonic to the root position 2. Okay, so the root position 2 has a little bit of a different sound from the 2/6 or the 2/6/5. Finally, there's one more wrinkle that I can add to this, which is the 2/7. So I'm going to keep everything the same. End up on my 1 chord on the second beat of measure 2. Then I'm going to go to a 2/7, to a 5/7, to a 1. Okay, so to get from my 1 to my 2/7 is very much a similar process. The upper voices have to move contrary, and the only difference is now that instead of going to the A in my soprano, I can stay on the C for the 7th, and then I'll resolve that accordingly. And this, you can see, actually makes a bit of a smoother voice leading than just a regular 2 triad, because I can keep my soprano on the same voice and then go do, do, ti, do. So here's that. So again, what we're doing here is we're making a tonic part of the phrase, which I'll color in blue. Go to a predominant, which I will color in orange. Go to the dominant, which I'll make red. And then if the phrase is going to cadence with an authentic cadence, it'll be back on the tonic. So most of my phrase is weighted towards the tonic expansion portion of the phrase. Once I hit my predominant, then I'm headed towards the end, and I'm going to move to my dominant. And then the dominant, of course, will resolve to the tonic. So that is how you write predominance part writing using 2 chords and 2/7 chords and their inversions.